let's see. Just gives you an idea of our agenda today. And I guess we're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You don't have confidence in me. Good? Everybody can see it?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I would like to take a moment of silence. We've done this for the past few years in memory of anyone in the village, or family, or friends who have passed this year. I'd also like to keep in mind and be thankful that we're all able to be here today. With the year that we've had, so much sickness, so much death, I count myself a blessing that I'm still here. So if we could do that, that would be great. Okay. All right. And next I have introductions. First of all, let me ask, is there anybody that has not attended one of these annual meetings since their first time here? You have a couple. Oh, you have a couple. Oh, good. Well, welcome. We normally have a lot more people here, I got to say that, and I attribute it to many factors, but we're going to go forward with whom we have and do the best that we can today. I'd like to introduce myself, Bob Ingram. I'm the moderator for today's meeting. I've been doing this for a few years now. I'm not perfect, so I apologize when I'm already up front for making mistakes. Try to do the best that I can. First question is, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, so this mic is working. We had hoped to have a microphone for everybody to step up to, so I'm going to ask that you kind of speak loudly when you stand and speak.
This microphone's working here on the chair.
That's working over here. Perfect, thank you. We could move the chair to the middle, if that would help.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. On my right, your left, I guess. I'm going to start with Commissioners Jay Buckley, Kathy Kozel, and Paula Doyle. Donna McKinnon is our clerk today. Dinah is not here. And Kelly Robitel is our DPW foreman. Next, we're going to quickly go through some procedures. The first thing I would say is that if you have not been vaccinated, please keep your face covering on. If you have been and feel comfortable removing it, that's fine. The process will be that I will read the article. It will then be moved and seconded. One of the commissioners, there are no petitioned articles at this time, so one of the commissioners will first speak on the article. We'll then open it up for discussion. All discussion will go through the moderator. By that I mean, don't just call out, ask questions. Ask, Mr. Moderator, I have a question, or want to make a comment. The moderator will make every attempt to allow everyone to speak, and I don't think that's going to be an issue since there aren't too many of us today. I would ask that you raise your hand. I'll call on you. Please stand, state your name before speaking, and speak loudly today so that everybody can hear. We're spread out more than we have in the past, and we want the commissioners to be able to hear your questions. So nice and loud would be great. All speakers must be courteous. Speak to the issues, not the individuals raising these issues. In other words, I don't want any bickering back and forth. The moderator, I will not allow excuse me, I will not allow any personal attacks or inappropriate comments or language. Any amendments to the motion must be presented in writing. So if you all have, even if you have to tear off a piece of the paper that you've got, if you want to make an amendment, we would like to have it in writing. At the end of the discussion, I'll reread the motion final time and we'll vote. Only registered voters may vote, and there may be some people here that are not registered voters. This is what you're going to use to determine if you're able to vote or not. So when I call for a vote, you're going to just raise the yellow paper. Well, bond issues, we don't have any bond issues today. Typically, they would be requiring a 2/3 vote, and depending on the amount of money, we somehow have to wait an hour. But I don't believe we have any of those today. Additionally, I want to say that any 3 voters may request in writing a secret ballot. We have our checklist folks here remaining here to take care of that. So if you feel you want a secret ballot on any of the amendments, as long as 3 of you state that in writing prior to the vote, then we'll do a secret ballot. And if that happens, I'll explain how we're going to do that. Those 3 people must be here. That's an obvious, I think. And if you have any procedural questions, simply call out point of order. You know, I've made mistakes before and been called out, so I don't have a problem with that at all. And by my majority vote, voters can overrule anything that I determined as the process. So if you're uncomfortable or think any of these procedures are out of line, you have the right to do that, to state that. And just call out a point of order at that point. Anyway, I don't know of anything else in terms of those rules.
Point of order?
So, yes.
I'd like to make a motion to allow non-registered voters to speak here at this meeting.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor? Good practice. Raise up your yellow sheets. It's unanimous. Anybody against that, first of all? Yeah. Okay. Good, Jay. That's your routine on a annual. Okay.
I'm done.
All right. So if we go back to our agenda, the first thing before we get into our articles is going to be a quick presentation to update everybody on the Reinhardt project. So, Kathy, if you want to.
Thank you. If there's no objection, we just wanted to give everybody kind of just an overview of where we are with the Reinhardt project. It's a substantial project. I hope all of you had a chance to drive up there to see what a great-looking tank and pump house we now have at the top of Reinhardt Hill. The project included creating a 120,000-gallon tank, a new pump house, and a new pressure zone. And one of the problems in the district was that the folks up on Reinhardt had substandard water pressure, which is technically in violation of DES's drinking water ordinances. So we were able to create this tank to give us more storage capacity, as well as put a pressure zone up there to provide adequate pressure to the properties up along that area. Along with that, we put in 4,400 feet, not we, but the contractor put in 4,400 feet of 4-inch water main that would be servicing the properties up on that portion of Reinhardt tank area. We removed 3 of the bleeders, which are the end of a water line or a water line that's not very deep enough. We'd have to keep the water running through it constantly in the wintertime in order to keep it from freezing. So with this activity with the new water main, we were able to remove 3 of those bleeders. And we also were able to take some money from the contingency and do a nice paving job up on Briston, Stock, and Aspen. Okay. So this whole project, the total project came in at $1,249,400. And it was going to be funded by the long-term debt that was voted at the 2019 annual meeting. We received a $295,000 grant from DES to help fund this project. And we're obligated to use $85,000 of our capital reserve funds as part of the condition of getting the $295,000 grant. And the way the grant works is for every $100,000 we spend on the project, we get 24% back from the DES up to the $295,000. So we've got to spend it, and then we get it reimbursed from the state. So the $1,249,400 project was split up between DN Tank, which is the company that actually constructed the concrete tank, $388,800 for that. Dawson's was the site guy, so he prepared the site for the tank. and installed the water line. They built the pump house, and basically they were just the overall site contractor for the job. So that came in at $671,776. Engineering, there was two parts of the engineering, $21,700 for the original design, and then $18,000 for project oversight, the LiDAR mapping, inspections, and all the residual things that came along with the managing the project. And that left us almost $150,000 in the contingency fund. So things that were unanticipated obviously would come out of that. And we do think there will be a substantial amount of money left in that fund to maybe tackle another project. So outside of this Reinhardt project. So far, next slide. So DN Tank, we've paid them in full, so their part of the project is complete. Dawson's, we've paid them $607,239. We still have about $65,000 of billable time and invoicing that they have not sent us yet. So they still owe us some more work, and we still owe them some more money. Engineering, we paid $18,000 on the first contract, $16,000 on the second contract. We paid $65,818 out of the contingency, so we still had $83,306 left in that contingency bucket, if you will. So out of pocket, we've spent $1,095,000 and $416. Some of that went through the budgets, the water budget, $29,000. The grant, we received $256,170 from the grant, and so basically out of pocket toward the warrant article, we spent $809,359. So the warrant article was $869,400, and we spent $809,359. So that's where we are with what we allocated, what we spent, what we have left to spend for the project. Next slide. So where we are today as far as in the actual physical project, when we did this slide, some things have now been completed since we did this. The pump house is pretty much complete. I think all the material that was on back order last fall, which is what caused a lot of the delays, which is back order of the pumps and the transfer switch, those have been installed. The operations manual from the engineer is a work in progress. They pretty much connected all the 19 properties up there, Jay, to the new curb stop valve.
Except for one.
Except for one. The roads will be restored to their pre-construction condition, but that'll be one of the last things that happens. The tank has been drained after the winter time, refilled, bacteria tested, so the tank is all set to go. And then basically Dawson's is going to come in, decommission the old tank, fill them with sand, and then we'll do the walkthrough and the final punch list of all the little miscellaneous things. The rocks over here need to be fixed. This needs to be adjusted. So we have a pretty good punch list. We'll probably bring Kelly along to make sure that the road issues are all resolved and that we're happy with what's going to be left when Dawson leaves. One of the things that was part of Dawson's contract and was in part of the overall project was trying to apply a fix to the upper Lakeview pressure zone. So right now, half the people are getting below standard pressure, and the other half of us are getting way too much pressure. So right in that area, and they've talked about 14 different ways of doing this. Don't quote me on 14, it may have been 12, but there was a whole bunch of different options on how to solve this problem. Last year, or a year and a half ago, we put in a new valve, right? We put in a new valve in, hoping that would solve the problem, and it helped, but it didn't solve the problem. So we're really going to have to go back to the original plan, split the zones up, and put in another PRV pit. So in the $63,000 or $64,000 left for Dawson's, $25,000 of that is earmarked for that new pressure zone. So that's part of that overall $1,249,000 project, is to get that pressure zone fixed up at the Upper Lakeview. And part of the project, when Jones and Beach did the engineering for it, there's probably another 10 or 11 projects that are potential projects. So depending on how much money is left over at the end of this project, will determine, based on priority and funding, how much money we've got, and what one of the most important things to do is we may be able to pull off another $50,000 or $60,000 project, and replacing a water main or doing any kind of pump house improvements, whatever that may be. Anybody have any questions at all?
No.
Excellent. Is the system operational at this moment?
Right now, the properties are connected to through the new water line to the new tank. but it's not pressurized yet. So they're basically being gravity fed. So yes, they're connected to it, but the new pressure zone is not operational yet. May 28th is the date that we got from Dawson's and from the water operator to go up there and to pressurize the system so that those properties will be getting higher pressure.
Mike?
Question, thank you.
Mike?
Percentage complete versus percentage paid out.
Well, I don't have my calculator with me, but we've spent we spent $1 million on 1,249,000. So whatever the math is on that. Anybody got their calculator?
So what's the percentage complete?
So let somebody calculate that.
85%. I don't know the math, Mike.
Jay's got his calculator. Is he
Okay.
calculating that? Okay.
I mean, everything we spent is on things that are complete. We haven't paid for anything that's not completed yet. Now, there's some things that have been completed that we haven't been billed for yet. So that number's not going to be exact.
Any other questions while we're waiting for that answer? No?
I'm right, it's 79.
Okay. So it's probably more complete than that. Like I said, that's based on just what we've been invoiced for. So there are some things that Dawson has done, like complete the pump house. Ian's done some work on the pump house. Tom from EII in Molten Borough area, he's done some work. So there's work that's been done that we haven't been
paid
invoiced
for
for.
yet.
My question is, the actual install, what percent is that? That's what I'm
If we
asking.
paid for 80% of it, they've probably done another half of what.
No, I don't think he's asking money,
I'm
Kathy.
asking what you're paid for.
How much is
I'm telling you,
how much is still to be done
right,
on the project?
10%. Basically, turning the pump house on and fixing the road.
Left to do, just
Yeah.
10%.
Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty close.
Okay.
I mean, we need the owner's manual finished, we need the LiDAR mapping, but those are all in, I don't know what state they're in as far as percentage completion, which is what the engineers have. So those are things that are owed to us. We've paid for most of it. They're mostly completed. I can't tell you that the LiDAR map is 95% complete. I don't know the answer to that.
And what's the retainage you're holding on it?
That's what? Could you?
I knew somebody was going to ask that question. So for DN Tank, we paid him the $388,800 has been paid. Of that, $7,776 has been put into retainage account.
Can I just make it easy for you? What percent is it, 5%, 8%?
It was whatever the state contract is. I believe it was 2% of the total. It varied because when you started, we were paying 5% of half of this, and once we reached half, it dropped to 2, and at the end, it ended up being 2. And then Dawson's retainage is $33,592. So we have those funds in our control for a year after the project is done.
Ron?
I know you said this, and I just,
Okay.
it went right past me. The go-live date,
May 28th.
May 28th.
Are you
Next week?
Next Friday.
Are you able to hear them? Okay. Just a sound check.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Wait, one at a time. Go. Might as well finish one.
Is there anything that we should be prepared for when we go live? I mean, as a district, is there anything that can happen that...
Well, the commissioners sent letters out to those homes affected, telling them that this increased pressure, that you have to be aware of it, number one, you've been underserved for so long. Some of these folks have augmented pressure pumps in their homes. They could have old water lines going from the curb stop to their house, that they just should be aware that the increased pressure may affect them. So we've notified them once already, and we're sending out a second letter now that we know the May 28th date, that they are notified a second time that they will be going live with higher, not extremely higher pressure, but higher pressure on May 28th. So the rest of the district won't have a problem. I mean, we were talking to fluid engineering, and he said the effect of the higher tank, which does give us some increased pressure just due to the fact that it's above ground versus below ground, will only affect some of the Bergamo by 2 or 3 pounds. So there won't be any massive rush of pressure going to the whole district.
Thank you.
I don't know if that was your question, but that's,
That's
okay.
right. Thank you.
Okay.
Ralph, did you?
How have activities been verified in terms of completion of these particular activities? I understand Dawson billed us ahead of time on work that he did not do and we paid.
What work was that?
fairly recently.
We haven't gotten a bill from Dawson's this calendar year. We haven't gotten a bill from Dawson's in 5
Probably
months.
last year then. But
Okay.
I understand there was work that was examined, and Dawson billed us, and we paid it, and then realized that we overpaid Dawson.
Or that was with one of the contracts.
The only thing I recall is that Jones and Beach applied an invoice to a contract that we'd already paid in full. It was like $1,400, and they reversed that and billed it to a contract that had not been fully fulfilled yet. I don't remember, like Jay, you
I'm
could
sorry,
speak to that.
It wasn't Dawson, it was Jones and Beach.
It was Jones and
correct.
Beach. So there was discussion about, we did pay it, and it put us over on their bid or their contract. We brought it to their attention, they took it off of that contract and applied it to the other contract. They took it off contract 6 and applied it to contract 1.
My point also is that there was no clerk of the works, so therefore we relied on others with respect to payment of bills. This is the largest project that I can recall for the building, and we had no independent examination of performance.
That is true. We did not have a clerk of the works. We had the engineer up there once a week. We had Ian up there probably once a week. He came through, I think, every Friday, and just to watch the progress of what Dawson was doing.
Okay, not seeing any further discussion. Should we move on?
Yeah, and these slides that we just showed you are not in the handout. If anybody wants them for any reason, just have them send a quick note to the office and she can forward them to you. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, Article 1 is a voting of offices. Normally, we don't even have the results at this point in the meeting, but this time we do. So I would just read the results for today's election. Commissioner for 3 years, Michael Smith, 32 votes. Paula Doyle, 5. And Grayson Merrill, 1. Treasurer for 2 years, Dinah Reese, welcome. I see you came in after the introductions, but our treasurer, 36 votes. Melissa Tibbetts, 1, and Holly Maudsley, 1. Clerk for 2 years, Donna McKinnon, 32 votes. Nancy Cole, 1, and Ted Foley, 1. So, congratulations to those who have been elected. I'm going to, Donna, you want?
Yep, I'll take that, thank you.
All right. Moving on, brings us to Article 2, which is the Operations and Highway Budget. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read it once. Everybody's familiar with the process. I'm going to read this once. Commissioners will speak to the budget, and then we'll open up for discussion. To see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $564,695 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately, with $30,000 to come from unassigned fund balance. This represents excess funds appropriated in 2020 due to an error in the 2020 annual meeting minutes regarding Article 10. Do we have a motion to?
So moved.
And seconded?
Yeah,
Seconded.
Ready?
Donna? I mean, sorry. Paula's going to speak on that one.
Can I speak up there?
As long as you speak loud. There's a speaker.
Okay.
Oh, it's the middle now, so just,
I'll just wander around.
you can hear okay?
Good?
Okay.
I'll try to talk loud. So I just want to take you through a few slides on this, because this is certainly the bulk of what we're asking for approval on today in terms of spending. So I want to give some background here. The amount's been stated, $564,695. Just for reference, last year what was approved by the voters was $560,740. So that's not what was spent, but that's what was approved for the budget last year. And there's information in your packets about more detail on the budgets, what was spent and in 2020. And that is unaudited. I also want to state that. Any 2020 numbers, we're in the middle of our audit right now, so we have some new auditors this year. They've been working through that pretty diligently, and we'll have audited numbers soon. In terms of 2021 differences versus 2020, just a few things worth pointing out that might be considered significant. We have the Rhinoc, payment for the Rhinoc tank of $17,500 that is incremental to what has been approved in the past. So in 2019, we raised $59,142. That was already raised, that will go toward that payment, but we need an incremental $17,500. There's the new truck payment that was approved last year for $11,500. And then the healthcare plan. We've gone back and forth on this, but this year we have changed our plan. We have decided this year to opt to provide our employees with the family plan if they want to opt into it. So we've only typically provided a plan that's paid for spouse, employee and their spouse. This year we added a family plan option, and one of our employees has taken us up on that, and so that's an incremental $6,000 for 2021. And then the other thing, which is not on the slide, is we need to do a dam emergency action plan this year. So this is something that is required, and there will be, I think it's approximately $8,000 to do that kind of work with some engineers. So this budget, plus the warrants, are really what will drive the tax rate, right? So these are the kind of, this is the bulk of the money that we typically would raise for the taxes. But as noted here, there's $30,000 that will not be raised via taxation. Speak up, okay. There's $30,000 that will not be raised via, I'll just try to move closer to, that will not be raised via taxation. And the reason is that we collected $30,000 too much last year. So it was a mistake that we made. And what happened was, what happens is after this is all finished, we submit all the results of the meeting into a portal online that the DRA runs, the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. Okay? We give them all the information, they verify everything. So after last year's meeting, there was a warrant article trying to raise $30,000 for a reserve fund. It was voted down by the voters. We went into the portal, we put in that it had been failed, but the minutes for the meeting that are being recorded, the first draft of the minutes was wrong, and the minutes said that it passed. And unfortunately, those were uploaded to the portal by mistake. So the DRA went through that and they said, oh, we got to raise this $30,000. So they raised it. It was included in the tax rate for last year. But it wasn't in the budget. I want to be very clear about this. The money was never put into the budget. It was not spent. We were not authorized to spend it. It's just extra money was raised last year that we now have on hand, but we cannot spend it. We can only spend it with your authorization through this warrant article. So what we're going to do is this year we're asking for $564,000. We only need to raise the taxes $534,000. We've already got 30 already raised. But we can't lower the budget because the budget is what we're asking you authorization to spend, okay? So it's a little confusing, but as I said, it's kind of like we took in advance, unfortunately, and it was our mistake. It's been corrected. We've had multiple conversations with not only our attorney, but our auditor and with the DRA. And the DRA actually drafted this warrant article so that we got it right. So it's being fixed, it's being addressed, and basically it will actually benefit the taxpayers this year because it will allow us to raise less in your tax payment this year. Okay? I think I covered all the salient points there. But just, I want to be clear, it was never in the budget. We raised the money, we didn't spend it, we were not authorized to spend it. It was never reflected in any budget numbers for 2020. It's just extra cash that was raised, it's on hand, but it's not in the budget for 2020, okay? Next thing is just a quick funding summary. This is what we're going to be showing you, all the warrant articles tonight. I want to just give you an overview so you understand how it affects your taxes. These are the kind of questions that come up, and it puts it all on one page. So generally, we have 3 funding sources this year. We've got the taxation, we'll have unassigned fund balance, which I'm going to talk quickly about in a minute, and the water bill. So as we go through all the warrant articles, they'll specify where the funding comes from, but this summarizes it on one sheet. So for the operating budget, we're asking to raise $564,695, but only, as I just stated, only $534,695 will be raised through taxation. $30,000 will be raised through this, the DRA is called an unassigned fund balance for our warrant article, and then that's how that gets funded. We have 5 warrant articles that we'll be going through that we're going to ask for funding through taxation. So the total amount of money we're asking for is $593,295. And that still remains to be seen whether that will be approved today. But if it is approved, if all those things are approved, we anticipate, and this is very much an estimate, we anticipate the tax rate based on the 593, will be $443 per thousand, okay? For $1,000 of value on your home. So for example, the way that works is if you have a home worth assessed at $200,000, your idolized tax will be $886. So again, these are estimates and anticipated numbers. I'm going to come back to the unassigned fund balance and the water, and we'll get to the water bill later. So we can go to the next page. Just wanted to give you a brief tax history of what that number means, the 442, because there has been last year was a big assessment year for Madison. Madison reassessed every home. A lot of us saw some huge increases. Some saw more modest increases. There were significant increases in all of the assessments. So what I put up here is a 5-year history of the tax rate and how it would impact. Just put up an example. So, for example, if you had a home that today is assessed at 200, I just put in, for example, that 2 years ago it might have been assessed at 167. So say you had a home, 167, it increased by 20%. That just reflects a 20% change, okay? Put in the tax rate per thousand for the last 5 years, and you can see what the actual tax was out of pocket if this was the situation you were in, okay? So that's kind of how it works. Just a couple things. I didn't totally understand this, so we sort of really dove into this. The July tax bill, you're going to get a tax bill in July, okay? That first tax bill you get is an estimate for the year, for the half of the year. And what Madison does is they base that on last year's tax rate. Because all this information that we're creating tonight by making approvals and whatnot, that the DRA will really set the tax rate for 2021 based on what we approved today until the end of the year. So when Madison has to send out that July bill, they've got to guess what the taxes are going to be. So what they do is they take your current assessment on your house, they take last year's tax rate, which is $498, and they take half of that because it's only for 6 months. So your July tax will be the current assessment on your home plus $2.49, and that will be the ALWICE portion of your taxes for July. What happens in December is you'll get another tax bill, and they'll take the new tax rate, which we're guessing is $443. We don't, that's estimated, okay? They'll multiply that times whatever the assessment is in December. That will be your tax for the year. They'll tell you how much that is, and then they will subtract what you paid in July, which was an estimate. And that will then that's what drives your December payment. So what we approve here today is ultimately what you pay for the year. But just keep in mind, in June, your first payment is just an estimate, and they have to have a number to use, so they use last year's rate just to estimate that. Okay. The other thing is, I just want to be clear for folks, for 2020, Edelweiss, this money you're paying only represents 25% of the total tax bill, roughly, okay? So you're also billed, when you get your tax, for Madison, county, school, town, and state education. That represents 75% of the bill. We're not discussing any of that today. That's handled in last week's meeting in Madison. So we're talking about 25% of your total tax bill. So today, for example, we are proposing a lower tax rate for this year coming up based on the current assessments, okay? Now, just keep that. The one thing I'll say about this example, this assumes a 20% increase in this one example I give. I had a 40% increase in my home assessment. My taxes went up last year, my out-of-pocket, because the assessment increase was higher than the tax rate went down for the thing. So if you have it really depends on what your house is assessed at. Is what drove whether you have a tax increase last year or how your taxes were affected. But if your assessment this year is the same as it was last year, which I would assume it was unless you made major improvements or changes to your home, your tax rate should be, for Edelweiss only, should be lower. Madison may end up in the end driving your taxes up. But the Edelweiss portion of your taxes, if everything's approved tonight, should be lower than it was in 2020. Okay? So I hope that is clear. If anybody's questions, I can come back to that. Quick page on capital reserve. It doesn't really affect the operating budget, but I wanted to provide this to everyone. These are the capital reserve accounts. They're kind of our savings accounts. And right now, we're going to be asking for funding today to be appropriated for the highway equipment repair and the highway equipment, because those are both pretty low. And Jay will speak to that later. The water balances are a little healthier at this point, although we will be spending some of those for the water projects, as Kathy discussed. Okay, this unassigned fund balance, wanted to speak to this because I've been coming to these meetings for 3 years now, and since the years I've been coming, no funding has been requested from this, and I know in the past it has. But the unassigned fund balance is really money that we have. It's kind of I wouldn't call it a savings account, but in a sense, it's money that the district has not spent. It's been raised in the past, okay? And it's important that we, the district, have some of this money available in case we were ever to run into a big emergency. But it's not money that the board is authorized to spend. It's money that's savings. So every year when the audit is finished, they look at the difference between, I think it's our assets and liabilities, and they determine what money in the past has been raised that we haven't spent. And that accumulates over time. And right now, it's in a pretty healthy position. At the end of last year's audit, it was $239,483. Now, we're anticipating some good additions that we're making to that this year, but we don't have the final audit numbers, so these are estimates. We anticipate right now, this was just based on our accounting, being about $78,000 under on the operating budget. Now, that is going to change, I know, when the audit is done, because, the audit always affects things in terms of timing, and that number is not the final number, but that's where we ended up with our accounting figures when we closed our books. We raised a little over $3,000 in 2020 with the driveway permit fees and the boat auction. So when we raise money, we sell something, we can't go spend that money. It has to go to the unassigned fund balance so that we can come to the taxpayers and ask them how we should spend that money. We also have $25,000 in revenue for the sale of the F-550 truck. We sold that this year at a municipal auction site, and we raised over $25,000. So that has to, by law, is put into the unassigned fund balance. And then there will probably be some warrant article savings from prior year change. So pending the final audit, we're anticipating that the unassigned fund balance should be around $350,000, plus this $30,000 that was raised by mistake last year due to the error with the minutes. So we're going to be recommending, as you saw on that summary sheet, that we fund some transfers into the reserve accounts for highway equipment, highway repair, to take some of this money in the unassigned fund balance and put it into some savings for the future so that we can use it if we need significant repairs to any of our equipment or want to make a purchase in the future, which we're going to need to do. So that's the unassigned fund balance, just for so people are clear on what that is. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. At this point, I'd start entertaining questions. I'm going to just pull up the... What happened to my... Mike? Nice and loud.
Want me to go over here?
Well, the microphone is near, but you're okay? Okay.
I'd like to make an amendment to the article to increase the article to $597,695, and let me break it down for you. We had $30,000 to administration. This is to hire a full-time administrator for the office. This is not working part-time. We hire somebody, they don't last. 3 or 4 days, they're gone. I think they've hired a couple people in the last couple weeks, and they haven't. You hired a person from Bridgeton, the woman quit. Then you just hire a fireman? Is he still on board? Okay, so that's 2 of them. You need somebody full-time in that office. All right? And also, I want to add $3,000 to have the highway department to clean the beaches on the weekends, and on the week, clean them and get comp time on it. There's money to be offsetted by the $33,000 to be taken, $33,000 that I'm asking for additional to be taken out of the unassigned fund balance, so there's no increase in taxes to anybody. All right? You just saw where they got over what, 350. They're estimating $350,000 in the unassigned fund balance, so you can take the $33,000 out of there. All right. I guess my only question is: $33,000, or is that $30,000 that you talked about from last year? Is that coming out of the unassigned fund balance to offset the taxes?
Yeah,
so
that actually.
The number be $63,000.
So the $30,000 is not even included in that $350 that we estimated. that 30,000 is just, it is considered by the DRA to be unassigned fund balance. So I didn't even include it in those totals.
All right, so I'm asking for 33,000, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the 33,000 come out of the unassigned fund balance, and this will not impact any taxes whatsoever. It'll let the commissioners go to work and hire a full-time administrator that the village district needs. We had Nancy for 10 years. She did her job. The village district is not working the way it is, and we all know that. Whether we wanted something, poor Donna works her butt off on a part-time basis. We need somebody to do this job, and Donna to help coach them, help get everybody up to snuff on it. So that's my motion. Somebody want to second it?
Is there a second? Ralph? Can I get a copy of that, Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna give it-
All I gave you was the numbers. At 30,000 to the administration, bottom line, that would be 494. At 3,000 the highway for beaches, 597, bottom line to cover this increase, be 60.
Right, so somewhere we're going to put in that where the money's going to come from, right? So we want to specifically say that,
33,000 from the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, all right.
So it would be 63 from the unassigned fund balance.
That's what I asked, is it 63 or 33?
It would
You
be
said to me the
63.
30,000.
For the warrant article, it would be 63, because we're taking 30 already. We've already asked for 30. He's adding 33 more
We're
to
going
it.
to change that 30 to 63.
Yes.
Right?
And then increase the total by 33.
Yep.
All right, so you
Okay.
change that back to...
It's going to be 594, 695,
Yeah.
and 30 is going to become 63. Everybody understands that? Where we're at? Are there any other discussion?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Did that, when you increased it by 30,000 for an admin, did you include health insurance?
Yes.
Social security taxes, the 14th increase in the New Hampshire retirement?
So what I did is I took 33% of that number, of the 30,000, and I had so I figured this is how I figured this out. So if you've hired somebody, it's going to be 90 days probationary period. That's a normal for when we hire somebody. All right, so they're not getting benefits for the first 90 days. After the 90 days, they start getting benefits. So let's say June, so you're not going to get anybody hired at least July, sometime in July, you even get them by then. All right? So then you have to go 3 months from that to August, September, October. So you only got 2 months of benefits in this month, in this year.
Okay.
And I took $60,000 as a salary. Divided by 12, that's $5,000. And then I took 33% of that for benefits. That's how I broke it down.
Any other discussion, Ron?
So this year, the district has been working with 2 part-time administrators. And I'd like to hear from the commissioners what they think of going to a single full-time person. And Don, don't take this anything, this is not about Don. This is just about me. So I'd like to have the commissioners speak a little bit to that.
Kathy?
And I think, one of the reasons that we opted to stick with the 2-person job was redundancy and the ability for that administrator to go on vacation, one of them, and not leave the office with no employees. So, and it's no reflection on Nancy, because she did do a great job when she was there, but the problem was when she wasn't there, it was a disaster, because one person was doing it for so long, and we didn't know what was going on in the office. We didn't know how to run the office. We didn't have any experience doing payroll, to paying bills, and even if every single detail was written down in the manual, it wouldn't have been the same. I feel you need 2 people there so that if one person leaves or wants to go on vacation, that you don't leave the district in a lurch. That's why we did it. And I think I still feel that's the better way to go. you're right, we've had some challenges of anybody's had challenges getting people hired in this environment. So if you get the right person in there, it can work. The girl in Bridgeton, her skill set was amazing. Unfortunately, her distance from the office was a little bit of a problem. So I think there are people out there that could supplement Donna, and that both people would know the functions of the office.
Sorry, just one
Okay.
follow-up, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the total, if you added the two salaries together, that you're carrying for office staff?
We're paying them $17 an hour, both people.
No, just yearly numbers. So we're talking, is it 60 numbers, 40 numbers?
So, well, we spent, last year, in 2020, we spent $27,000.
The lowest budget.
For two part-time people?
We budgeted $32,300 for two people.
Mick?
Cover your thing about the vacation. You really got somebody taking a vacation for 52 weeks here now, the Friday. That Friday that the office isn't open.
Not 52.
So no one's working that Friday. Donna's working 4 days.
Okay, you said 52 weeks, you meant 52
Well,
days.
that's a year. Nobody's in that office on that Friday for a year. So take it, for Nancy to take 2 weeks vacation, that's a gift. But Nancy always worked around the needs of the village district.
She did.
I mean, so let's not go down that street.
We can't rely on hiring somebody who would be that flexible.
And I'm not saying get rid of Donna. I think Donna's an asset to the village system. I think you need a full-time administrator, and the administrator can work with Dawn when the needs that she needs help. But prior commissioners, we loaded Nancy with work. We just piled it on, and piled it on. And every commissioner that's been one can say what I'm saying.
Nobody's disagreeing with that.
So, I mean, maybe the time to start looking at to have a full-time and a part-time is now.
So your proposal includes a
Addition.
full-time
Well,
person and
you've
a
got money in
part-time
here
person?
for
Addition.
part-time and now. I'm saying
In addition to
the
it.
rest of the year get a full-time administrator hired and up and ready to go so that we can budget it for next year. That's the best way to go in the village district. You can't keep anybody in that office part-time. Let's be realistic
Well,
about what's going on. You're lucky you got here because she lives here. And she's
Mike,
living-
please don't.
I'm sorry, but you're lucky she lives
For
there.
reasons.
I'm not. I'm just saying, I'm saying the facts.
Okay, we're not disagreeing with the facts. You know, we were fortunate to get Donna. I think we were fortunate to get Jerusha. She worked for the town of Bridgeton. She brought a lot to the table. We learned a lot about organizing the office. She was right on top of the website and the MailChimp. So she was a great find. Unfortunately, her distance from the office was a detriment. And I, you know, we're hiring the best of the batch that we get in the interviews. And I guess, unfortunately, very few people are really looking for work right now, and it's hard to find people. So we've got a couple of ideas going forward for a part-time person, so...
The only thing I just want to point out is that I think the way you want to fund it is great. I like that it would be coming from the unassigned fund balance this year. Just keep in mind that next year it will drive the operating budget up because, and maybe next year it's funded that way as well. Some of the operating comes out of the unassigned fund balance if there's money there. But I just want to point that out. I would be in favor of, funding it the way you've proposed. I think that makes sense this year.
Anybody else, Jay?
This woman here,
Oh, I'm sorry. Nice and loud.
Please.
Nice and loud. And could you state your name?
I live on Ada Lice Drive. My question with keeping an employee, it is difficult where there's so many jobs and that, but what about doing part remotely for that person who is traveling? Like, why wouldn't we be able to try to accommodate some of the work remotely where everything's really pretty much done remotely?
I think an office position like that's challenging. A lot of it is answering the phones, people coming to the office to pay their bills, receiving the mail every day, going through the mail, doing a manifest every week to pay bills and to get checks signed. So
Right,
we do have, and I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but there was a woman by the name of Catherine DeVoe. Diao. And she was a prior treasurer for the town of Madison. So we reached out to her, and we use her 1 day a week. So anything that comes into the office that we're not sure, okay, how do we handle this refund check, or how do we handle, we sent $7,000 back to the bank for the truck payment. We didn't need the full 108 that was appropriated, we only needed 101. So how do we post and account for the money that we sent back to the bank? So she's very good at that, and that has been done remotely. So we do use her as a part-time resource, as a person who has great experience with QuickBooks, and again, was a treasurer for another town.
Right.
That we use her maybe 4 hours a week, maybe.
No, 2 hours.
2 hours a week, maybe.
Right, and I agree that I would continue that. You would definitely want to have somebody you can reach out to,
Yes.
especially remotely when you have questions and they have experience. But again, for somebody to come in, the mails, to check the mail, I'm just saying if it becomes an issue where you had that good employee, but her commute was an issue, to maybe work with other individuals, that's all. It was a suggestion.
And some of that we were able to do. For instance, she took the minutes for the meeting, and then she could, at home, type them up and get them posted on the website. So she was able to do some of the job at home. We don't really know the reason that she stopped coming to work. We found out, that her house is now for sale, so there may have been some other
Right, I'm
issues
just
there.
saying in
But that is an
general.
option.
I'm just
Yep.
saying in general, when you're out there looking,
To make that-
it might be a selling point for somebody to
Yep.
accept the position.
Okay, yep.
TC?
TC Luncheon. I think you need to take into consideration the appeal of a full-time position as opposed to a part-time position.
The appeal to...
Of a full-time position as opposed to a part-time
You
position.
mean to a candidate?
Right.
Oh, okay,
Right.
okay.
Jay?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we've discussed this actually, a full-time position, and again, the majority came back to having the redundancy on 2 part-time employees. I think the biggest challenge that we have here in Idlewild is, let's face it, folks, we've got a reputation. And I know other towns have advertised over the years. We've seen those ads in the paper for administration positions at a municipal office. We've called those offices only to find out that they've had numerous applicants. So we were thinking of coattailing off of that, seeing if any of those that may have been rejected because they had prior experience could work here in Idlewild. Nada. No interest. What we need is really, Donna can do the training, but to Mike's proposal here, if someone were to come in, it really should be someone that's got experience, up and running, and so by, as you said, the end of this year, they'd be ready to go next year. But the problem is, Mike, and again, it's the name Idlewild. And that's the difficulty that we really all have to overcome.
Mike?
That revolving door doesn't help the name, and that's what you have now.
Yeah.
So how do you correct that?
Yeah.
You make changes to help the village district.
Yeah. So I think we've done so. Paula actually advocated this year for the family health insurance. I think that's a good start. That's a good attractive benefit. The other thing is, we just had this 4th part-time employee put his resignation email into us. So I think, and we haven't had time to talk, but we probably should talk and maybe do an autopsy on why are these people leaving.
Any other discussion before we recap? Ryan?
I don't want to drag it on, it's a beautiful day outside, we're hopefully going to be...
I'm just getting started.
So we spent $27,000 on basically or close to it for the 1 part-time person this year, and we have allocated in the budget how much for the other person?
That was combined.
Combined.
That's combined. So how much is allocated for the 2nd part-time person?
we've been paying the part-time people, so there's been some gaps in between.
No, but if you took it a yearly basis, have we allocated
But we-
10,000,
We
30,000?
do $17 an hour times 20 hours a week.
It's about, that totals about $35,000, $36,000 for two part-time. We budgeted for
Actually,
less because we're already in May and we haven't paid, so we accounted for taking, that it wasn't for the full year. But that's about what two part-time would cost you.
35,000 each for,
No, $35,000 total. That's $17 an hour times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks a year. Okay, so
50 weeks.
50, whatever. But, you know, it's I'm giving you a rough
We
number.
budgeted, I misspoke earlier. I said we budgeted $27,200. We actually budgeted $32,000 because 15% of that goes to the water. So it's just.
Oh, I'm
total
sorry, you're right.
$32,000.
Yeah, it's 32. But we didn't budget 35 or 36 because we're in May, or, you know, part of the year's gone and we haven't had somebody in that spot. So we don't need to budget for it. We didn't spend the money. So, but it's about, to have two part-time people, it's going to cost $36,000 probably for a year. Depends how many, I mean, we put in 40 hours. They might work a little more than that, a little less.
is there,
It's not,
Mike,
yeah, it's not a lot.
One way. Yep, Mike.
The system isn't working. You've got to acknowledge the fact it isn't working. You've got people leaving within a week's time, all right? The concept that was proposed 2 years ago to sell on the voters, you've got to back up and say, now, you look at it and say, it isn't working. What do we need to correct it? We know that when Nancy was there, it worked. That's the answer here. I know Nancy, I just don't want to say that.
And nobody's disagreeing with that, Mike. It's just that when Nancy left, the office was in turmoil by no fault of hers. It was, you know, we spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars trying to, you know, to bring in experts to help us get into the computers, to figure things out, to, you know, work with a QuickBooks expert to get in and help us get going on QuickBooks. So I think that was the whole point. It's not about how it was nice to have a full-time person. Yeah, I mean, Madison's not open on Fridays. I don't see why it's necessary that Idlewice, with its, you know, 300 residents, be open 5 days a week. It's nice, but it's not necessary. And I think the redundant, I don't think we can afford to pay a full-time person and a part-time person. Again, this year, it looks like short money because you're right, it's not going to really start until the last couple of months of the year. But you go to next year and you're paying a full-time person, a full year, and if that person chooses to take health insurance, whether it's them and their spouse or potentially a family plan, I think the voters will be surprised to see how much more that'll cost them. And if that's what they want to do, that's what the commissioners are here to do. I understand that. It's not our decision. It's not our final decision to make. If the voters want to cough up that kind of money this year and the following year, we'll consider it.
Yes.
Yeah, Doug Prescott from Little Shore Drive. From a business continuity standpoint, I couldn't agree more that having one person in the office is too high a risk. Business continuity issue. Got to figure out a way to make two people part-time work. That's the key. Having one person, Nancy did a fabulous job. I worked with her a lot as well on our projects. No question. But when that one person, for whatever reason, is gone, it's a huge problem for the organization's continuity. Too high a risk, I think.
And no matter how much documentation you have, it's never enough, you know. So, you know, that person, oh, I opened this bill. Oh, I already got a copy of this bill. I remember seeing that from 3 weeks ago. But a new person, okay, that looks like a valid bill. I'll pay it. So, you know, you just lose that like you said, that continuity of what's going on a daily basis, and understanding the water ordinance and the driveway ordinances and how to do the water bills. I mean, there's a lot to the office. And, you know, fortunately, Donna, this year wasn't as bad as last year, so you're finally getting, you know, into the rhythm of it, having been, unfortunately, kind of self-taught. So, I mean, my argument would be that I think there's good part-time people out there, somebody who may be retired from a municipality, that has some municipal experience, that doesn't necessarily need health insurance, they don't want a full-time job, and that's what we were hoping to find.
Okay. Yes.
I just have two pieces.
Okay, who am I speaking with?
Yeah. Could you speak? Stand up and tell us your name first.
Oh, okay. Holly Maslin. If you have two people part-time, perhaps there needs to be an overlap so that, everybody works on Wednesday, or it's a Tuesday, Thursday, or if you have even a full-time person, the part-time person works 2 days a week. I know that the hall from Bridgeton, because I did it for 25 years, is really hard. And so if it's an hour out and an hour back, that's 2 hours of their wasted time. So perhaps part of it could have been 1 day a week was remote, or there was some kind of compensation for that time spent in the car.
I mean, with this person, the drive is no problem. She had a camp somewhere in between. And I'll drive from my camp, or when I leave work, I'll go to the camp. We questioned the distance. We really did. And she convinced us that it was not a problem. So to that point, and you're right, Holly, we did do overlap, obviously initially for the training purposes, but we even talked about that. Once that person was comfortable answering the phones and where to get the answers to the questions, that they could be there on maybe Mondays and Fridays, and then overlap on Tuesdays, because that's the payroll day. So yes, you're right, absolutely. You can't have one person 2.5 days and one 2.5 days with no overlap. So agree.
Paula?
I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that person, but I will say this. I'm going to say some things people probably don't want to say. We don't know, because she didn't tell us. She stopped coming in. But I can tell you it was not a great fit for her. And she had a lot of issues with some folks in this district. She used the word harassed. She felt threatened by someone at one point. And that gets to this point that Jay made about the kind of district we live in. This is our community. And the fact is we have some folks in this community who are not always very kind and very thoughtful when they deal with people in the office or with the board. And, the board members, I can tell you, I think I can speak for these two, we can let it roll off us. But when our employees are not treated well by citizens in this district, it has an effect. And she said to me on 2 occasions, if this continues, this is why you're going to have turnover, because this is how I don't want to be treated like this by people.
So was it addressed though? Was her concern addressed?
In one situation, we actually called the Madison police and had someone, and we felt she challenged us and said, "Are you protecting us?" And we said we felt that we were, but it doesn't even matter at that point. If somebody, you know what I mean. The point is that this is our community, and as we are all responsible, obviously. I think in the sense also for watchdogging for each other. We all, in the end, I say to people, we're all we have. We have to govern ourselves. We need people to step up and participate on the board. We need people to treat our employees with respect. They work hard, and you may not agree with what they're doing, but you come to the board and you tell us, and then we're empowered. That's what we are authorized to do, is to manage situations. But she told us directly that she had some bad interactions with some people in our district, and she was very upset about it and really turned off. So I want people to be aware of that. People don't like to tell everybody this stuff, but I'm going to tell you. And it's really important that people know what's going on.
Okay.
One last thing, if I can. What's being proposed is an option to the board for money that, if it's unspent, goes right back into the unassigned fund balance to potentially provide more of a base. If you have to have 2 part-time employees and they need more hours for some other reasons, maybe it's responding to requests in the office or whatever, but it's an option. And it should be $35,000 for 2 part-time.
A couple of logistics points before we vote.
One quick thing.
Yeah.
Just kind of to address one, and Donna, I hope you don't mind me saying this. Donna even came to us and said, look, because of my insurance, I can only work X number of hours a week. She said, if I'm going to be pushing that envelope every single week, hire me full-time, pay me full-time, and help me with my health insurance. So that option was given to us. We know she's a great employee. That would have worked, but then we would have been right back in the same situation we were in before. So to your point, Lon, I mean, we have some options, and you're right. So if this gets amended, if the amendment gets approved and it passes, The money's there, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to do it. We can look at other options, for the rest of this calendar year.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple of things here. First of all, we're only voting for the bottom line in this budget. The commissioners, the new Board of Commissioners, will have the decision whether to spend that money in that way or not. We don't have really authority today. What we're doing when we vote yes or no, we're telling them our belief as to what we think should be done. That doesn't necessarily mean that would be, and that goes for the $3,000, which nobody seems to have mentioned, the $3,000 added as well. It can be put in the bottom line. They can decide to rake the beaches or not rake the beaches. The money will be there. If it's not spent, it will go in the unassigned funds. I just want to make that clear so everybody understands that. Now, one more before you vote?
Very quickly. So I was actually going to make an amendment to this budget as well, but certainly not as much money as Mr. Smith has proposed. And the reason being is because in the past quarter of this year, we've received a tremendous amount of 91A requests, and it was simply to hire somebody to fulfill those requests. We don't see the individual that has been making a lot of these requests going away anytime soon. So I was going to make a motion for $5,000 increase, but if this voting body wants to increase it to Mrs. Smith, fine, the money will be there for that, to fulfill those requests. We have to do it. 91As are law.
What are they? I'm sorry?
91A request. It's a request for documentation that we have on hand in the office. Anything that is on hand in this public document, any taxpayer, any public resident can request those, and we have to give them to them within a certain period of time.
Okay.
Was the amendment that Mike suggested specifically, did that specifically state for the purpose of adding a full-time administrator or not?
No, we don't vote the individual line items. We only vote the bottom line. His explanation for why he wants to add the money is what we've discussed. Okay? Any other discussion before we vote? Good. I'm going to read it, I hope, correctly. Okay. And this reads, to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $594,695 for general municipal operations. This article does not include appropriations contained in special or individual articles addressed separately, with $63,000 to come from the unassigned fund balance. This represents excess funds appropriated in 2020 due to an error in the 2020 annual meeting minutes regarding Article 10.
It's 597, not 594. I'm
I apologize. 597. You're right. Thank you. It's here. It's just not on my paper here.
That's not correct. It can't be written.
Well,
it can't be written that way. We can't. That's not correct the way it's written. So, because
the DRA is okay.
No, because only 30,000 is because of the mistake. So maybe you need to say 63,000 from unassigned fund balance, 30,000 of that because of the error.
Right.
Because the way it's written now, it sounds like the whole 63 is because of the mistake, and that's not correct. So you have to separate the 30 and the 33 increment that you're taking from the unassigned fund.
It's still,
no, I know
wait a minute, time, so it's still going to be addressed separately with $63,000 coming from unassigned balance, is it not?
Yes.
And then explains that $30,000 is represented excess funds?
Yes.
So we want to make that $63,000 to come from unassigned fund balance. Then in the parentheses, do we put 30,000 of this?
Of which 30,000 is...
You're writing this down, of which 30,000 it represents excess funds appropriated in 2020.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Donna, do you get that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Okay. Now, we're going to vote this amendment. That's all we're voting at this point is the amendment. We're not voting the bottom line because you still have the ability to add or subtract before we vote the final budget. All those in favor, remember we're using the yellow sheets. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? It passes. Okay. Now, are there any other amendments? No? Yes.
Oh, this is still a different topic on the same budget. Is that okay to do that now?
On the budget?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm Diamond Reese, I'm the treasurer.
apologize for being late. And this is very simple, and I hope not controversial. On the line item of TAN interest, you have a zero amount, and we did not need a TAN last year, that's true, and I don't believe we will this year because of our unassigned fund balance being still large. However, I would like to put $1 in there, just in case something happens and we might want a TAN, or excuse me, we might need a TAN loan. So I would like to raise the budget by $1.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
There's no motion.
Well, she's made a motion to adjust the amount, total amount from $597,695 to $597,696, and the rest of it remains. We're not worrying about $1 out of unassigned funds, right? Are we all together on that? Okay.
Add that to the line item.
We're all set, Donna? Okay. All right.
I didn't see it.
As there's nothing additional to be put in, we're back to the main motion. Do I need to read it again? To read to see if the village district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 and, I'm not going to get it wrong this time, $97,696 for general municipal operations. This article does not include an appropriation to contain the special or individual articles addressed separately, with $63,000 to come from unassigned fund balance, of which $30,000 represents excess funds appropriated in 2020 due to an error in 2020 annual meeting minutes regarding Article 10. We're good? All those in favor of the main motion? All those opposed? The motion carries.